Well, I am 46 years old, just turned 46. I'm a dad of 3 daughters. My oldest, Morgan Hinkleman, she graduated Waccamaw High School in 2023. She was a member of the first end of the back-to-back state championships for Waccamaw girls soccer, which would have been their second overall. She's currently a junior or a rising junior at the University of South Carolina and currently studying abroad in Barcelona.
Oh, okay.
My middle daughter, Madison, is 16. She's a rising junior at Waccamaw High School, and she spent the last 2 years on student council at Waccamaw High School. My youngest is McKenna. She is a rising 8th grader at Waccamaw Middle School. She ran varsity track for Waccamaw cross country. Finished 10th in the state and was all-state her first year running. Was actually the Georgetown County champion. She also played JV soccer for Waccamaw and then ran varsity track this year as a 7th grader, again making it to the state meet with the 4x800 relay team.
Wow, so this past Sunday you had a proud Father's Day.
I did. My wife is an educator. She's been at Waccamaw Middle School for 8 years. She teaches 7th grade English, and she's also one of the co-directors of the drama program, and she is the sponsor, or one of the co-sponsors for the student council at Waccamaw Middle School. I have volunteered at every school from the intermediate school up, various roles from school improvement council to being the guy that puts up the stage at the auditorium for the middle school drama productions. Volunteer at track meets, soccer, concessions, pretty much anything that they ask me to do.
Now, how long have you been practicing law?
So I just started my 18th year of practice. I'm licensed to practice in the United States Supreme Court, 4th Circuit Court of Appeals, then the Federal District Court for the District of South Carolina, as well as state courts.
So if you're elected to the board, you'll be the only attorney on the board. So, I mean, what do you think that would bring to the board as far as, your legal expertise?
Well, obviously, being able to understand and interpret state law and state policy, it helps to have somebody that speaks the language, because let's be honest, it's a little different language, and being able to understand and interpret those the intent of the statute really will help. Additionally, we've had a few lawsuits that have popped up here in Georgetown County at various times, and certainly it would help, I think, the board to understand what the attorney for the school district is actually telling them and sharing with them.
Now, you mentioned all the volunteering you do within the school district, and you're an attorney and all this stuff, so why did you want to add school board member to your plate?
Well, when Ms. Baxley resigned back in April, I was sitting at a track meet, and I had several parents come up and ask me about my interest in doing that. And I told them, no, I'm not really interested. I've got a lot on my plate with the nonprofit that I'm working with, doing the rest of the other things volunteer-wise and work. They kept after me and started talking to some people and realized that we really needed a change. And when that kind of became apparent to me, wanted to try and bring in as many people and get as many perspectives as I could.
But what do you think it was about you that the parents went to as wanting to be their representative?
Well, I think they know me. I think they trust me. I think they know that when you have people that show up and then keep showing up, they'll keep doing that. And so those people are hard to find a lot of times. And so I think all of those things, and knowing that we can work together to come up with different ideas and different ways of solving some of the problems, because these problems that we're still experiencing now have been around for a very long period of time.
And what are some of the problems or issues that the parents have talked to you about, saying that if you are elected, you need to tackle this or that? What are they?
Well, obviously one of the big ones is school safety. We talked about that a little bit at the forum this past weekend. Another is the disciplinary problems and the vaping in schools, and the safety aspect, and that kind of encompasses all of that, but it doesn't just stop, start and stop when they get into the school building. At Waccamaw High School, we've had a series of wrecks for kids leaving and coming into the school. So we need to do a better job of trying to wrap around and make sure that we're protecting our kids. That's the big one.
Now, what can the school board do about traffic accidents?
Well, we can work with our partners. We can work with the sheriff's department, trying to figure out ways to police that area a little bit better. We can talk about possibly changing speed limits or installing crosswalks. There's a lot of different things we can do, but as you can probably tell from the forum on Saturday, one of my main focal points is building partnerships with people to solve problems, because we can all identify the problem, but it takes teamwork to solve the problem and identify a reasonable solution to those problems.
Mm-hmm. Now let me ask you about the school budget. Of course, you're like me, you're an outsider looking in, so you don't have the inside information. But from what you see, is the district's budget at about $120 million? Is it in line with what it should be, or do you think we're spending too much money?
Well, I don't know that it's a matter of spending too much money or not spending enough money. I think what it is we're not doing it effectively or efficiently. That's the big question in my mind. One of the things that we've talked about a lot is the disparity between what we're spending in certain schools versus other schools, and yet the schools where we're spending more money per student we're not getting the return on investment. Mm-hmm. So it causes me to have a few questions about how are we efficiently spending our money and where are we putting our resources so that we are getting the most return on investment. Additionally, there are some problems that we're going to see coming down the pike with what's happening with federal funding. We're dealing with it in the nonprofit world as well. So there are a lot of issues that are around the curve, so to speak, that we're going to have to address. And we need somebody that can look at a budget and try to go through and say, are we doing this effectively? Are we doing this efficiently? Is there a better way for us to put our money in a position to help others succeed?
Mm-hmm. Now, whoever wins this race, of course, will be representing mainly the Waccamaw Neck specifically, but you'll have a vote on anything that happens in the district. So let me ask you about Plantersville Elementary School. 70 students, I think 10 teachers, so that's basically almost a teacher for every 7 students. Should it stay open?
Well, I don't know that I have enough information right now to say yes or no. I know that, John and I have talked about this a little bit, and he's right that schools are the cornerstone of the community. And Plantersville is going to fight for their community just like Waccamaw Neck would fight for theirs. So I understand that. But what we need to do is we need to take a long, hard look and say, are we putting our resources in that school in an effective way? Are we spending, and being good stewards of the money for the entire county? Are there things we can do to improve those test scores? Are there ways we can improve the experience for those students in that school district, or in that school specifically, that we haven't thought of? So I don't know that we can say right now it should or it shouldn't be closed. At least my personal opinion is I don't have enough information just to make that call yet.
Now, when Superintendent Keith Price was here, he started the Magnet School program for Plantersville and the Carver's Bay Schools and Browns Ferry, in hopes of attracting more students to do 2 things: bring more students to Plantersville, but also to desegregate these schools somewhat, because we still have a racial imbalance. And these schools, the Justice Department says we're not supposed to be doing that. But it doesn't seem to have attracted students from other parts of the county. So what do you think should happen with the Magnet program after the 5 years are up?
Well, I think we have to look at it and see, again, are we getting a good return on the investment that we put into it? Is it something that's beneficial? Are we seeing the numbers increase? Right now, it doesn't appear that we are. But at the same time, we have to be mindful of the students that are in that area that are being served. And let's be honest, one of the things that we're having a problem with is a decrease in enrollment, period. So I don't know that was the targeted specific reason for that, but a byproduct of what we're trying to encourage. But as I've said before, when you lose two industries or two big employers in the county, which takes families and relocates them other places, we're going to have to do something to bring in industry. Now the problem is that any industry we're trying to bring in, we're going to have to fix the schools first, because they're not going to want to come in here and invest in Georgetown County if we're not taking care of the things we need to take care of here first.
And speaking of new industry coming here, if it does happen, it'll be more people. But we see housing being built all over the place. But like you said, we used to have 10,000 students. Now we've got about 7,000 students. So even though we've got houses being built, everywhere, it looks like we might not have to worry about building new schools for a while. But do you think that that's something in the next 4 years, if you're elected, you might have to deal with, building new schools?
Well, I don't think that we're necessarily looking at that right now. A lot of the schools, specifically in the district we're talking about, are fairly, newer schools compared to the other parts of the county. We've had, a little bit of an increase in population, but we have a decrease in enrollment. So those schools aren't, frankly, being filled right now. So unless we find a new solution for the employment issue and bringing in new industry, I don't see that being something we're going to have to deal with in the next 4 years. But at the same time, you're always looking down the line to say, hey, we need to make sure that we're prepared for whatever happens.
Now, you mentioned one of the concerns that you've heard, not only at the forum Saturday, but before that, is safety in schools. What do you think can be done to make it even safer than it is right now?
Well, I think that we need to have a school threat assessment for every single school in the district. I've said it many times, I don't like this one-size-fits-all thing that we've tried to do for years. We need to tailor what we're doing specifically to each of these schools, because each community has its own sets of challenges. So to me, I would rather spend funds on that than sit around in a committee and talk about what might possibly need to be done. Or we can get a professional to come in and say, these are the soft points, these are the problems that we are seeing, these are the issues you're gonna have, and this is how you correct them.
So you think that would have been more effective than the safety committee that's been meeting?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, as far as bullying goes, that's something that goes along with school safety. What can we do about that?
Well, first and foremost, I think disciplinary enforcement needs to be equal and equitable across the board. I hear from a lot of parents that sometimes people are being treated differently because of who their parents know or who their family is, first and foremost. So I don't think that that's appropriate. I think we need to do a good job or a better job at trying to make that equitable. Secondly, I think, another part of what we talk about in the campaign is partnerships and building partnerships. One guy can't do it by himself, right? The school can't do it by itself. We need the parents to get involved, and we need the parents to help us with that. So it's building partnerships, it's talking about expectations, it's raising those standards, it's trying to make sure that we're doing everything in an equitable way so that everybody is treated the same way.
Now, you mentioned building partnerships. You said that several times. So what groups or individuals or whatever are you talking about building partnerships with?
Well, you have to partner with the county council. Again, we're talking about bringing more industry into the area, which will increase the enrollment potentially. It will increase the tax base so that we can do some things there. Building partnerships with the parents. It's a proven fact that the more involved a parent is in their child's education and schooling, the better that child is going to perform. Building partnerships with the specific educators and the staff there, asking them, what can we do better that'll make your experience better? Because it goes back to, again, another issue that we talked about a lot is the teacher retention issue. If your employees are happy, if your educators are happy, they are more likely to be loyal. They are more likely to stay. And so it's partnering with anybody and everybody that we can. It's just like I talked with the Realtors Association who endorsed me, talking about the price of housing around here. trying to find ways to make housing more affordable will bring the ability of more of our educators to live in the district in which they teach. That strengthens the community from the ground up. So anybody and everybody that we can talk to, that we can find some consensus to build on, we should be doing that as the board.
Right. Let me ask you about the, you mentioned teacher retention, and one way to keep teachers is if you could pay them, what the surrounding counties are paying. But the problem is, we give them a raise, but then the other counties do as well. So we're always trying to play catch up. I mean, what can we do about that?
Well, I mean, there's that. Obviously, increasing teacher salary is a fundamental part of that, right? But there are other ways that we can make their lives better. We can support them in their classroom. We can allow them to run their classroom in the educational space that they're in control of the way they need to do it. They know their students. My wife's an educator, and she knows her students very well. And so that helps them believe that they're being supported by their administrators. If the district supports the administrators and allows them to do what works for them, those are things that don't cost us a whole lot, that will improve their experiences. So they're listening to them, taking into account what their opinions are. I think are very important to that teacher retention issue. Because if you look at the salaries, the starting salaries between Horry and Georgetown County, or Charleston County and Georgetown County, are not terribly out of line. It's where you get to the top end of the scale where we start to see a little bit of a problem. But allowing for and encouraging upward mobility of these teachers into the administrators' roles. There's all kinds of things that we can do, like I said, that don't cost us anything, but will get us a happier and more satisfied workforce, and they will in turn provide us with better results.
And you mentioned top end of the scale, and this is a question I've asked the other two candidates as well, about the perception we hear from a lot of people is that the district is too top heavy. Too many people in the Beck administration building. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily too top heavy, although that is a situation we can look at and see, is this an effective and efficient way of using our revenue and our resources? I think it's more that a lot of the people, when you get to the district office, you get a little out of touch. It's kind of like in my profession where you have a judge that's been on the bench for 10, 12 years. A lot of them may have forgotten what it was like to be the young trial attorney trying a case. So they're not in the schools as much as they ought to be. So I think that's probably part of it, is they're just not understanding what's going on day in, day out in the schools like they used to. And maybe we need a refresher course on that.
And one more question that people have talked about, they did Saturday in the forum and other places, is curriculum. What the teachers are teaching and the books are teaching from and things like that. The school board locally didn't have a lot of say-so in that anymore. But what do you think you can do as a board member to help please parents when it comes to curriculum?
Well, you're right. The school board doesn't have a whole lot of say in those standards. Those standards are set by the state, right? But what we can do is make sure that we are teaching to that specific community. Again, come back to that one-size-fits-all. It doesn't seem to fit very well. I'm a little bit, upset at the fact that it seems that a lot of times we hear, well, we can't go through and we can't introduce this program because another school doesn't have it. I think what we can do is we can tailor what's going on, the classes offered to specific schools based on what their need is and what their desire is. Specifically AP Physics at Waccamaw, or something like that, instead of getting told, well, we can't do that because we can't offer it at every school. So I think that's always something we can keep in the back of our mind and make sure that we're doing a better job of listening to the community, listening to the schools about what it is they need or they want, and trying to implement that as best as we can.
All right. Well, let me just ask you one final question, and that's the one we always wrap up with. Why on July 8th should people vote for you?
Well, I think one of the things that we lack on the school board is a parent's perspective. First, I would be one of two on the school board that has children in the school district. And I feel like if you're enacting policy that's going to affect everybody else, you ought to be affected and bound by the same policies. I'm the guy that shows up, whether I'm working at a track meet or working on a set at the school. So I promise you, the biggest parts of my campaign are the accountability and transparency. I want to make sure that our parents, our community, our educators understand that they have a direct line to me. I don't want to go, I want to come back into the district. I want to be visible. I want people to come up and talk to me about their issues so that we can try to make their students' experience the best we can, because we owe them that.